The Adult Ballet Studio is a podcast featuring conversations with the empowering voices of the adult ballet community, a world where passion has no limits and dreams can take flight. My name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm an adult ballet dancer and your host. Welcome to the studio. Happy Tuesday and happy July, everybody. Welcome back to the Adult Ballet Studio. This conversation for our first episode of the month is such an important and inspiring one, and I had so much fun talking to our guest. Daniel Watt is an Emmy-nominated documentary filmmaker and former dancer based in Los Angeles. He began his dance career in Cleveland, Ohio, before going on to study in New York City and eventually Los Angeles. He performed with the Joffrey Ballet in Los Angeles in shows such as Romeo and Juliet, Taming of the Shrew, and Petrushka. Dan says his love for dance grew in Cleveland when his family's basement was used to accommodate a local ballroom studio after a damaging fire. But dance wasn't Dan's only career path. He made a couple of career shifts later in life. He tells a story in this interview about being on stage during a performance and being unable to stop paying attention to missed lighting cues, which if that's not all of us perfectionists in ballet, I don't know what is. He says this is when he realized his love for working behind the scenes in theater was becoming greater than performing, and he made the transition to producing and teaching theater before moving over to a career in film. He spent 5 years in film development at Columbia Pictures and 5 years working at Psycho Entertainment, a London-headquartered music, television, and film production company founded by Simon Cowell with Sony Music Entertainment. It was during this time that Dan decided he wanted to focus on telling stories that explore the human experience, spirituality, and social issues. He was a producer on the award-winning film The Center, Gibbons and Guardians, featuring Jane Goodall, and he's the producer and director of the award-winning documentary Everybody Dance, which is currently available on iTunes, Apple TV, and for free on Amazon Prime in recognition of Disability Pride Month, which happens to be the month of July. So it's perfect timing for any listeners who haven't seen the documentary to catch it for free. You won't want to miss it. It's a gorgeous film that's thought-provoking, inspiring, and moving. The film, which we'll talk about in depth in our interview, explores the everyday lives of kids with different disabilities and how ballet has changed their lives. It follows 5 kids and their families as they prepare for their end-of-year dance recital, as well as their dance teacher, Bonnie Schlachte, founder and director of Ballet For All Kids, a nonprofit program that teaches classical ballet and other dance styles using the Schlachte Method. This is a certified curriculum developed by Bonnie to accommodate all abilities, body types, and learning styles in ballet. The documentary has received so much acclaim. It won Best Direction of a Documentary last year at the Chita Rivera Awards. By the way, Dan has some other news to share about his work with the late, great Chita Rivera in this interview, so stay tuned. It was also a 2022 nominee at the Cleveland International Film Festival. It premiered at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival earlier this year, and most recently it was nominated for an Emmy. I was so excited to connect with Dan and learn more about the important work he's doing to connect film, storytelling, and dance. Okay, I'll stop talking about all of his accomplishments now because I could go on, but I want you to actually hear from him. Check out our interview. Hey, Dan, how are you?
Oh, pretty good.
Well, yeah, thanks for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it. I know you have a busy day of press, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But yeah, I guess we should start off talking about the biggest news that you are now an Emmy-nominated documentary filmmaker. So how does that feel? And how did it feel getting that news, and seeing the film just have so much success?
It's exciting that it's getting the recognition, and I'm hoping that because the stories are so great, these families are so open, and the kids with their lives, when filming it, it actually changed my perspective and my total outlook. So I'm hoping that by being nominated for an Emmy, that it'll raise the awareness so people will see it and then maybe learn like I did.
I'm so happy for you. I saw the news that you posted on social media and was, clapping and so excited. And just for anybody listening who doesn't know or hasn't seen the documentary, can you just give a brief overview of what it's about and where they can watch it?
Yeah, it's called Everybody Dance. And what I do is I follow 5 kids with different disabilities and their families. on a 10-month journey through life and towards their dance recital. It's a story. It's more of a story of dedication, determination, confidence, and the community that is formed, in a dance studio. So it's not just dance. Parents can watch this with their kids and learn and embrace these families and be excited and cheer for them and all of that, because it is more about the community and what they've learned in dance class that they then apply in their everyday life, which was my main goal in the beginning. I wanted to tell a documentary about the importance of arts and that the arts matter, because as you know, it's always the first thing cut out of every, budget. I wanted to interview people who, like, if you had played violin, if you took violin lessons, if your parents made you take piano lessons, if they put you in drama class, but you didn't make a career out of it, how did that help you in your everyday life now? Did you being in the theater department and taking drama help you now as a public speaker and you're running for city council? I just wanted to find those type of stories. So that was my wide blanket, my wide view, and I didn't know my way in. And I really wasn't sure where to go. And then I had a dream about two girls that I taught like 18 years ago, Fran and her two daughters, and they had autism. And I woke up and I was like, that's interesting. Why did I dream about Fran? And I thought, I didn't think anything of it. So I had the dream again about 3 weeks later. And I thought, I have to trust this. This is, my higher power. This is my God poking me saying, here's your story. Here's your way in. I am giving you your story. You're still going to get your main message of how the arts can help people in their everyday life. I just was shown my way in. And once that happened, I trusted my gut and trusted myself and ran with it. It's kind of how that's how the movie started. But I started personally as a dancer at 15 back in Cleveland and studied in New York and then moved to LA and did that whole journey and was in a dance company. And then I went on to choreograph and teach and produce, stage productions and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of like also a full circle moment for me doing this, not planning on it being about dance, but it just ended up that way.
And I love hearing that story. I know we talked ahead of this interview and you told me a little bit about the dream you had about Fran, and it gave me, such chills. I have chills, hearing it again, because it's clearly, the story was handed to you. It brought your career full circle, and, you've done so much in your career. I can't wait to get into it as well. But I know that, so the documentary centers on the studio Ballet For All Kids. How did you come across that studio in particular and the director, Bonnie, and decide to tell their story for this film?
Well, when I decided what the story was going to be, I researched conservatories, dance studios, colleges, rec centers all across America. And it's funny because I stayed away from Hollywood. I live in Los Angeles, and I thought, no one is going to be doing this in Hollywood. All the studios in Hollywood are going to be training dancers that want to be, in the next, Lady Gaga video, or on the next dance show or for a convention. I thought it's not going to be in LA. And I interviewed so many people, and there's a lot of different schools out there and programs that offer bits of dance. And I had seen some videos of some of the people had sent me videos, and it wasn't what I wanted it to be. They were teaching 10 minutes of dance, and then it was more like a recreational class then, and the kids would play with balls and stuff like that. And I do believe there's a purpose for that, but it wasn't the story that I wanted to tell. And I then stumbled across Bonnie here in Los Angeles. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I spent 8 months avoiding Hollywood, and there it is.
Back to Hollywood.
Yeah, it's 2 hours from my house. And I thought, this is not going to happen in Los Angeles. And, So I just had that preconceived idea, and there she was. And it is in the title of her studio. It's Ballet for All Kids, and anyone who walks in that door can take there. So there are kids who are neurodivergent or have a disability, but there are also people like me who are neurotypical, who I don't have autism. I'm not on the spectrum or ADHD. Anyone is welcome in that studio, and that's what makes it so amazing. Is if you walk by the window, you don't know. You would not realize, you wouldn't have any idea if someone in there had some type of disability or not, because everyone is welcome and they all work together as one cohesive unit.
Dance can be a little exclusive at times, and so it's great, what her studio and what your documentary is doing to democratize dance for, all kids, as you said. And, it goes back to that, community feel that you talked about. You're all dancers, you're all artists, and, I loved that. That really came across in the film. And I know it's set up as you're sort of following these kids on their journey to their recital, which I loved. I loved being able to have that moment to see the recital at the very end of the show. So did you know that you were going to set it up in that way on this sort of timeline, or how did you decide that that was the best way to tell the story?
It all came down to just pure luck. I had talked with Bonnie 5 or 6 times, and then she wanted to talk to the board of directors and then talk to the parents, because I wanted to make sure that I told the story the right way and to not intrude. Also, I think that also what was a benefit to me, and Morgan Spurlock, the documentary filmmaker who actually just died a few weeks ago, was my mentor. So I talked to him before I started, and he said, Dan, no one else could make this movie. Your entire life has led you to make this movie because you started out as a dancer, so you have that aspect. You then were a teacher. You put on recitals. You have insight to every aspect of this movie and how to present it. So he said, just think back to everything that you've gone through and everything that you've done as a theater producer, as a choreographer, and all of that. And I wanted to make sure that the kids were still taking dance class. So I wanted to be the fly on the wall. I didn't want to. The parents are still paying for them to take their ballet class. They're not paying to be in a movie. So I needed to present it that way. And I wanted them. And I think this is what is one of the good things about the movie, is it's them telling their stories. It's the kids and the parents telling their stories in their words. And they just graciously let me be the platform to present it. So when I got to the studio, the first thing was, because I worked for Columbia Pictures and I worked for Simon Cowell. So I worked for unlimited budgets, big productions. So the first day of filming, when everybody felt, I brought 3 cameras, I brought a sound guy. I'm like, this is going to be brilliant. And we put that in, and picture that in a dance studio. I was like, where was my, I have no idea why I thought this was going to work. When you think back, I'm like, that was just stupid, Dan. And these kids came in, and it's just like any kid. If an 8-year-old walks into a room and there is a tripod, it is a piece of playground equipment for them. And yes, they're like, well, I'm going to climb on this because that's what it looks like. And they saw the boom mic, which was, everybody wanted to pet the caterpillar because they saw this. These kids were just weaving in and out the camera. And I thought, no, this is not going to work. So within 5 minutes, I had everybody, my entire crew, get out of the studio because they were a distraction. And I promised them I wouldn't, and I didn't want to be, because then you're not capturing the correct story. So within 5 minutes, it switched to my DP Ben, the head camera guy, just putting a camera on his shoulder or holding it. And in the studio, it's just filmed that way. And you can see there's 1 or 2 times, like there's one time in the film where the girl that had started laughing uncontrollably when she was nervous, and she left the studio and she, bumped into Ben. So there's a little shake in the camera. But I thought that scene is so important. And I talked to her and her parents to make sure it was okay. I wanted to include that in there because one of her ways of coping was to laugh. When she's nervous and can't figure out the choreography, she just laughs. But she also knows to leave the room to not disturb anybody and then come back in. And I thought that's a learning tool for us to see, that's just one of the aspects of it, and how taking ballet, she then learned, leave the room, and compose yourself, and then you can come back. She could practice in the hallway and then come back in and join the class. And I thought that should be included in the movie, but I didn't want to embarrass anybody, so I wanted to make sure the family was okay with it and the girl was okay with it, and they were like, yes, because this is her coping mechanism. This is what she does. But we all have them, do we twiddle our thumbs? Do we tap our leg? When I'm on my phone, if I'm nervous, I keep tapping my phone, when I tap it, takes a picture of the screen of my so we all have those things, and I just thought it was interesting to show this one aspect of it. Then when we got to the theater for the recital, I had 9 cameramen, because you know what it's like. Most of the juicy stuff happens backstage. It's, where's my shoe? I ripped my tights. Where's my costume? Oh, I only have one shoe. It's the people in the hallway where all of a sudden it's like, I'm not going on stage. No way. So I knew from my own experience, I needed to have people in the green room with the kids, in the hallway, in the wings, because right before they go on stage or they come off stage, to capture that and show the entire experience that these kids, after 10 months, are putting on a show. And then you need the cameras in the audience to capture the parents' reaction to their kids, like any recital. So I then had to just figure that out.
It is, the whole film is so beautifully shot. You captured so many gorgeous angles. You captured the kids in such an authentic way. And I love, that was a question that I didn't think about asking, is just how do you go into a dance studio with, a film crew making a documentary and make yourself sort of invisible so you can tell these authentic stories and not be a distraction? That's really interesting to hear that whole process.
Well, but it also shows, I think, that what I learned as a dancer, as a producer and a choreographer is, we're taught we might be asked to change something in 2 minutes. All of a sudden they're like, what? You can't enter there. You have to enter from the left and start on your other foot. And you're like, I'm sorry, what? And you just have to switch everything and go, because it's live. So live theater and performing teaches you that. So I think by being in so many of those type of situations, when you have to make that call, my God, they're in the wrong music cue. What do I do? Do you fade out? Do you fade back up the song because he's in the wrong cue? Do you fade and it seems like 4 minutes, but it's 20 seconds, and I just thought, I just made that decision and pulled everybody out. Don't disrupt the class. Okay, what am I going to do now? Ben, go film, put it on your shoulder, stand in the corner. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's what but again, it shows the benefit of what I did. It actually was part of the message of the movie that I applied. It's what I learned in the arts that helped me decide that next decision.
And it shows that you are, best positioned to tell this story because of your background as a dancer. And the film has received so much, so many accolades. It's nominated for an Emmy. It's gotten a lot of positive reviews. It won, Best Direction of a Film at the Chita Rivera Awards last year. It was a 2022 nominee at the Cleveland International Film Festival. It premiered at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. So much success. I could go on and on. But when you were making this film, when you were really in the thick of it, did you feel like we're putting together something special? Like, did you have a sense of the success it was going to have, or was this something that you didn't expect? Or how does that feel to have all of that success? Doing something like this.
I think I didn't think that far in advance. Because I fell in love with these kids and these families, and in the beginning I was following 10 families, and Some of the scenes are at their house. These families let me come to their house with 2 camera people and spend a day with them, follow them. There's some scenes that we didn't put in the film for time reasons, but went out to lunch with them. And to see the one girl, Ailey, who is I fell in love with. We walked into the restaurant. It's everybody had to come over and say hi. Every waiter, every hostess, the chef came out and served her food. Everybody just loves this little ball of sunshine, her personality, her smile, and she says hi to everybody. And when she walked in, it was like the queen has arrived, and everyone's like, "Hey." So I was just so interested in their stories and their lives that you don't think further than that. And I have to give a lot of credit to my co-producer and editor, Isaiah, because I was with these kids every weekend for 10 months. I couldn't narrow it down. I wanted them all to be in the movie. And that isn't possible. He never met them. So it was a great pairing, him and I, because he then could, just by visually watching what I had captured, create the story arcs for each of the kids. Who can tell the story the best on film in the easiest and most compressed time? So he was able to create like 7 of those. And from that 7, we had to narrow it down to 5 for time reasons. But that was, again, that also comes from working in the arts and working in theater and working as a team, because I had to trust him. I had to say, okay, here's this. So it was collaboration and teamwork, which is just like, performing on stage. You have to trust your partner. Are they going to catch me when I fall back? I've done, some of the pas de deux work, and, you have to lift the woman and she's trusting you to do it. And I had to trust him that we were on the same page, and he was able to narrow it down.
I love all of the parallels between making this film and your career as a dancer. It's a testament to, that full circle moment that you talked about, coming back to dance with this film. And I loved hearing from all of the kids, and, their stories were so touching. I loved the moment. There was, one student that you interviewed who said that he felt like he could be fully himself in the ballet studio, whereas outside the studio, he might have to hide parts of himself. And I was wondering if you could talk about what you learned in making the film, or just in your own career as a dancer, about how ballet and performing arts can help you find your identity and be your true self.
Well, I think as we progress in our own careers, for some reason, and I don't know why. I don't know why I live this way, but I've always lived this way. I've always realized, for whatever reason, whatever job I'm doing, I do that, and I try not to complain, and I truly believe that wherever I am right now, I'm going to learn something. I might not see it now, but I'll see it in the future. And there's a message here, and that this job, career-wise, as a dancer or in life as I am now, is to lead you to the next thing, which then leads you to the next thing, which leads you to the next thing. So I've never questioned where my career went. And a perfect example will be when I moved to California. I went to 2 auditions, 2 different times, and they didn't even watch me dance. These were the cattle calls, and we're like, 3,000 people in a line around a building, and they line you up and they go, you stay, you stay, you stay, and you stay. And they didn't watch me dance. And I thought, I have busted my butt to be able to do 3 pirouettes correctly and perfectly on both legs, and 4 and 5 on my left foot on a good day. So I was like, they're not letting me show them that. So the second time I went, I stayed in the parking lot till about 11:30 at night. I stayed there the entire day and waited for the creative team to walk out, and I went up to them. And first of all, I can't believe I did that. And I was like, I just wanted to know why you're not watching me dance, because I've studied so hard for this. And the woman said to me, do you want me to be truthful? And I said, yes. And she said, because you look too masculine. And I thought to myself, have you met me? I mean, but it I don't say it hurt. It was a learning point for me. And then what I needed to do, because I was going to still be a dancer, is I then had to decide, where am I going to take my career next? If right now, at this one point in time, I'm not the look, and this is the thing that whenever I get asked to speak at a college and something like that, I always tell this story, is the kids should realize that had nothing to do with my talent or my ability. So what I did is I then put all my focus in and started auditioning for live dance companies, because that's where I thought I could thrive live on stage. And then through that, and through my ballet teacher here in Los Angeles, Jody Wintz, she was with the Joffrey Ballet. Well, the Joffrey Ballet at that time decided they were going to do the big ballets. They did Romeo and Juliet, Taming of the Shrew, Petrushka. And it was cheaper for them to audition and hire people out in LA than it was to ship their junior team, their junior company out here to pay their airfare, their residuals, their hotel. So what they did is they auditioned us. So then for 8 years, whenever they did one of their big shows, I got called in to perform with the Joffrey Ballet at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, downtown Los Angeles. Okay, are you kidding me? What an experience to be 8,000 seat theater with this company. That's where, again, you might not understand the lesson when it happens, but it is leading you to the next thing. And sometimes that's hard, but if you can trust that and just go to the next thing that's in front of you, it works out. So
it does. And you're a testament to that, because it worked out for you really well. And it shows, I mean, to go to the parking lot and stay there till 11:30 at night, it shows your perseverance, and only a ballet dancer would have that kind of, perseverance to keep going. And you touch on that in the film, because one of the dancer's parents is talking about how ballet is such a slow and steady process that it teaches her work ethic, because if you have a goal, you have to complete every single step to get to the end result. And you can see that in your career. That's really what you've done as well, as you had patience and perseverance, and you just kept going. And I know we talked on the phone previously about how you decided that you were going to be a dancer on the Carol Burnett show when you were very young. Was that the first time that you considered becoming a professional dancer, or what was your first sort of introduction to dance, and how did you decide you wanted to pursue it?
Yeah, I used to watch that show with my parents all the time, and I just loved it. And I didn't know, because I was young, so young, what it was about it, but I knew that I loved that, and I loved the Merv Griffin show, and I loved watching, Tina Turner and Lola Falana, who your audience probably wouldn't even know who Lola Falana is. These amazing performers, and I knew that I just wanted to do that. And like you said on the Carol Burnett show, I was going to be the third. I gave it so much thought that I was going to be the third one from the left, because I felt height-wise that's where I would fit. Now, that should have been a sign that I was going to end up being a producer, choreographer later.
Yes.
I noticed that in third grade. I'm like, oh, no, I'm going right there next to the girl with the short, dark hair.
Planning it all out already.
Yeah. But my mom and dad took ballroom lessons, and the studio had burnt down. And it's such the ballroom dance. It was called the Harvey Kerr Dance Studio. Well, we had just moved into a new house with a basement in Ohio, and we didn't finish the basement yet, so it was a big open floor. Harvey Kerr gave my mom and dad free dance lessons for him to offer the classes in our basement while they rebuilt his studio. So I'd be sitting upstairs watching TV or doing my homework, and all of a sudden there'd be a thump on the floor, and downstairs they had taken the broom and they would hit the ceiling. And that meant I needed to come down, because like your husband or your fiance couldn't make it to class. So then I had to come down and be your partner. It was interesting that in like fourth grade, I was learning to lead and follow. I was put into those situations. It was like, oh, okay, someone needs a partner. So I was exposed to ballroom and not knowing that it was also teaching me timing and all that stuff. Who knows in fourth grade when you're going to your mom and dad's ballroom class, watching and participating because they needed someone, that was going to actually affect and help you in your career later, learning the timing and stuff. So when I auditioned in my freshman year at high school, auditioned for the the variety show, the choreographer director of it said, Dan, you have a natural rhythm and talent with dance. You should study this professionally. If you want to be on stage as a career, you need to focus on that. And she's the one who took me to my first dance teacher in Cleveland. So, you're just, when you're surrounded, thank God, everybody in my life, they all were just so helpful in guiding me. And I trusted so many of them that I ended up where I am now. Who would have knew?
Who would have known back then? And we have to give a shout out to Cleveland, because I know that you're from Ohio, and I am too. And I love Ohio. So that makes me really happy that you started your career there. And I was curious, I know, so you mentioned you danced with the Joffrey Ballet. You've had an incredibly successful career as a dancer before transitioning into film. What was one of the biggest moments or something that stands out from your career as a professional dancer that you can share?
One of my biggest moments, I remember, well, there are two different things. One, I remember my mom and dad came to see me perform. I was in a dance company called On Our Toes, and we were doing a show, and I was featured in like 2 of the numbers. And, I was older, so, I was taking class 5 days a week and working on the weekends and all that kind of stuff. And there was this one number where I had to arch back. I did a rondeggiant with my leg, and I hit my forehead. It was a jazz number, and had to arch back and then come up and keep dancing. And my mom and dad were in the audience, and it was the first time where I felt I was dancing on a cloud. I wasn't counting. I was just dancing. And I remembered going back so far that when I came up, I was dizzy. But I kept going, and I remember my mom and dad going, where and when did you learn to do that? But I just remember it so vividly, not because of their comment, but because it was the first time that I just felt free. And that doesn't happen often, with the entrances, and there's a lot going on, and to be able to have had that experience was great. And then I also know with On Our Toes, I was the dance captain. And this is when I knew I had to make the transition. I would go out early and set the lights and the lighting cues and the music cues and stuff, and the company would come in, and I was dancing on stage, and the complete opposite happened. He was in green lights, and he should have been in blue. And I'm doing my little chassé towards the audience in the air, switching my arms, going, he's in the wrong cue. He's in the wrong cue. And I'm still dancing, but my mind is like, darn it. Why aren't the lights blue? And I thought, I have now crossed over. I am no longer a performer. The other side is more important to me. So I trusted that. And that's when I went to the next step. And I talked to Jody, and she said, yeah, if that interests you and you're excited about that, and that's what you're worried about, and not about pointing your foot, it's time to, take the next step in your career.
I think that's great advice. Yeah, pay attention to those little things that are pulling you in different directions. I know then you transitioned more into the production side, and then you moved into film as well. You worked for Columbia Pictures, as you said, Simon Cowell for a while. What was that experience like, and how did you make that transition from ballet to film?
Well, I had done everything that I felt I needed to do. I had accomplished everything, going from a dancer, and then, I had produced and choreographed probably 50 musicals. It's like, okay, do I start with Annie again? Do I just repeat everything I've done? I have the blocking done, I have the script, but then to me there's no challenge there. It's like, okay, well, I can stay here and just repeat it for the next 10 years. Or, I wanted to be a dancer on the Carol Burnett show. I mean, how dare she retire before I even make it to Los Angeles? So I thought, why not? Why not investigate that and see what happens? So I applied for a job at Sony Pictures. And again, this goes back to, I took the job that I didn't want to get my foot in the door. I was in international sales, but what it did is it got me a job on the lot, and I got to learn how it all works. So I paid attention to everything about it. And then after a year, asked the boss there if anything opens up in where I wanted to go in film development, just let me know. And he goes, you're kidding me. He said, they just internally said that a job is going to open up in 3 weeks. I let him, again, one thing to remember is if you don't tell them, they don't know. You might think you should do this or you might want to work with this person, but if you don't tell them, they don't know. So I told him, and then I got that job. And then Simon Cowell poached me to do the One Direction documentary. He decided to open up a film and television department here in the U.S. And he had just put together, X Factor, and just put together the group One Direction. And he thought, there might be something here. Why don't we film them and see what happens? Well, look what happened. Oof.
They took off.
But Simon gave me some of the best advice ever. He always told, when he hired us and when interns came in, he said, it only takes one yes. It doesn't matter if there were 50 no's. It only takes one yes. So I've always kept that with me with especially making this movie, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how extensive it was, the things that I had to take on. When, you work for Columbia Pictures and Simon Cowell, you call somebody and they answer the phone. Well, yeah. Oh, it's Dan from, Simon Cowell's office. When you don't work for Simon Cowell, they don't answer the phone. So I learned so much about marketing and everything that you have to do, and also when you work for Columbia Pictures and you need, I need another camera on, Soundstage 5, and then you hang up. You don't have to worry about the money. You don't have to worry about anything. You're just like, just make it work. And then you hang up and someone else makes it work. Well, I had to make it work. It's like, wait, So you learn all of those lessons. But again, to take with you that it only takes that one yes. And now my movie got distributed, and now I'm nominated for an Emmy because of one yes.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's such important advice. It speaks to me as a writer and as a dancer. There's so much rejection in both of those industries. I'm sure it's, similar in film or theater or, whatever you're doing in the arts. There's a lot of rejection, and to just keep going, you keep getting no's, but all it takes is one yes. I think that's such great advice. And I know that this podcast is, about anybody who's working in ballet to make it more inclusive, more welcoming. A lot of our audience is made up of adult ballet dancers who discovered ballet later in life, or maybe, had a moment like you where they returned to it. And so I was wondering if you could talk about how it felt to make that career pivot, after a career as a professional dancer to, move into theater and then into film, any anxiety that you had about that and how you, worked through it to really take that risk.
Well, I don't know what it is. There's something about it. It's like every 10 years I switch. When I choreographed, it was like 10 years. And then, then I went on to the producing part, also choreographing and stuff. But when you do that, when you choreograph that musical and you're like, I can do it better than them. well, then do it or be quiet. And then I took the next step. I always have to be challenged and move on to the next thing. And then again, like I said, I could have just started with Annie and repeated everything, but it wasn't a challenge for me. I needed to find out what the next thing was. So I went to film, the scripted film. Well, then that wasn't enough for me because I've always loved real stories and I wanted to tell stories with a higher purpose because Phil Donahue, I used to come home and watch Phil Donahue every day after school, and my mom was like, why don't you go out and play? And I'm like, shh, Phil's on. I mean, he was having in-depth conversations, but I loved that. I love hearing people's stories. So then I decided to go into the independent film and produce that. So I just have always trusted my instincts and my gut. I do the work. You cannot not do the work and do your research and plan. You can't just go the heck with it and just quit. I don't believe in that. But I do trust, and I listen to the song Defying Gravity by Indina Menzel from Wicked. People know when something's going on in my life. I might not know what it is yet, but when I put that song on repeat, and it plays for 3 to 4 weeks wherever I am. If I'm in the shower, my husband is like, my God, this just keeps playing on a loop, or I'm in the car and I just play it over and over and over, and that I just know that something is bubbling up and there needs to be a shift or a change, and that song, for whatever reason, me to the point where I have to make the decision.
So. That's amazing. I love to know that, because that's one of my favorite songs in musical theater. I have it on a playlist that I play in my car all the time.
Those lyrics speak to you, and then my husband is like, I better buckle up. Something is gonna happen.
Something's bubbling.
I know what it is. But I'm gonna buckle up.
Yeah, those lyrics are so inspiring. It's such an incredible song. I love that. And I know you mentioned in another interview that when you were putting this documentary together, you were really inspired by the fact that all of these kids in your documentary, they focused on their similarities rather than their differences, and sort of came together with the one goal to dance, and sort of found community in that. So what's the one message that you hope audiences take away from this documentary when they watch it? Or, what can fellow dancers or studio owners learn from it?
I think that the main thing is exactly what you said, is to focus on the similarities. And if we could just do that in everyday life, I mean, I think Bonnie could solve world problems with her philosophy. Is you focus on the similarities. These kids came together with one main goal, was to put on a recital. And that was it. And it didn't matter who was in the class. Everybody was in it. Everybody was in the routine. And one thing that I took away from this, that I realized about life in general, is we all have obstacles in our life. And it's how we have to then figure out how to maneuver around them, how to accept them, and how to work through it in our life. We need to then embrace the differences and learn to just dance together. And I just think the world will just be a better place. I think that we have the opportunity every day to work towards inclusion. And if we make it our goal to just build a community that is and create a world where everyone can do well and succeed, that's what we should strive for every day. And to wake up with that mindset, or if not, flip the switch and go, okay, be aware of what's around and what can I do to make it a better place where we all can succeed and we can all be included.
I love that message. It's such an important one. Obviously, I love this documentary. I love all of the work that you're doing. I've taken up way too much of your time because I know you have a big day of interviews today. We do have one final section on the podcast called Petit Allegro. It's just like fun, rapid fire questions, if you're okay with that. Ask, all the dancers who come on this podcast, what's one thing you have to have in your ballet bag in every class or rehearsal? So when you were, dancing, what was one thing that you always had to have with you?
Dark chocolate.
Ooh, I love that.
Yes. Just 1 or 2 bites in between classes.
That's a great answer. And, obviously you worked in theater for a while as well. What was your favorite show to work on or to perform in?
One to perform in was that one that I did with the group On Our Toes. That moment is just so vivid in my mind, where I was just free as a dancer. And it was just more of a recital. There wasn't a name to it. But I have my two favorite musicals are Oklahoma, because it was the first one where I got paid to choreograph the entire thing. So that has a special place in my heart. But my absolute favorite musical is Guys and Dolls.
Oh, that's a good choice.
As a choreographer and a dancer, I just loved that show. Yeah.
And I know you mentioned so much happens backstage during a performance, and you wanted to make sure that you had cameras back there to capture all of it. Do you have any funny backstage memories you can share from your time in the performing arts?
Well, it didn't happen backstage. It happened on stage during the rehearsal. It's when I was with the Joffrey Ballet, and I was Petrushka, and I was the dancing bear. And first of all, I felt honored that they just asked me to be the dancing bear in the circus scene. Well, there was a guy, I had to walk out on all fours. So first of all, you think, oh, I'm the dancing bear doing attitude turns, and then you're crawling on stage in a bear costume. So it kind of brings you down to reality. And the guy that was leading me wasn't paying attention. And his job, there literally was a rope around my neck, and he was leading me out. And I was going towards the orchestra pit, and they just yelled, "Stop!" And I heard Scott Bernard, this amazing man who ran all the rehearsals. Everyone was just screaming, "Stop, stop." And I just froze, didn't know what it was. It was about me. I was walking towards the orchestra pit, and the guy that was supposed to be leading me wasn't paying attention.
No.
Would have fallen in the string section. So yeah, we ended that. We stood, they kind of slid me back, and I'm like, why are people and all of a sudden I'm like sliding on the floor, and I stood up, and they ended the rehearsal for like 5 minutes, and they came back, and I had someone else leading me the next when I walked out. Nice to meet you, Joe. Okay, I guess here we go.
Oh my gosh, what a roller coaster. I'm glad everything turned out okay. But a little stressful.
I'm glad I didn't have to buy all those violins if I would have fallen in.
Right. Well, then the last question I like to ask everybody who comes on the podcast is, in a perfect world, what would ballet or what would the dance world look like, or what would you want it to be?
It's starting to change, but I actually had a conversation last year with Virginia Johnson, who runs Dance Theater of Harlem. And she said it is definitely changing, but it is still two different worlds. There is and I'm quoting her, she said there is the white ballet world and there is the black ballet world. And she said there shouldn't be. There should just be the dance world. And that's all it should be. It should just be the dance world, and there should be no boundaries or anything like that set up. And I agree with that. There is definitely a change happening, but it's not happening quick enough. And I also wish that more people would realize how important the arts are. Even if you don't choose to make it as your career, there are so many lessons that we all learn. I had this conversation just the other day, how I try to tell people how important the arts are. How many of your listeners watch TV on any platform? Now take whatever TV show you're watching. There are lighting people. Those people probably started in the theater doing lights. What about that music that plays that leads up to the crescendo in that Tom Cruise movie, the boom 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 boom, and you've in it and loved it, that they are now drawing there. So the arts, every one of us take in the arts every day of our lives, and we don't know it, and we don't think about it that way, so we don't appreciate it. We listen to music every day. And when you get into the car, somebody turns on a radio station or their playlist, whatever it is. Those are musicians. That's a sound guy who learned somewhere how to put it all together, which is an art form. So I want people to think about that a little more too.
I appreciate so much all of the work that you're doing to make the arts more accessible and to just spread the word about how important, performing arts are, whether it's, dance or theater, or music, film. I just appreciate your work so much. So for any listeners who are, listening to this conversation and want to know more information about you or your documentary or anything you're doing, where can they connect with you or find you, online or on social media?
Dancing Dan W on everything, and Everybody Dance Doc is also on Instagram and Twitter. And we're lucky that July is actually Disability Pride Month. So you can find the movie for free now on Amazon Prime. In support of that, they're offering it for free. And Tubi is also offering it for free. But it's also on Apple TV and other locations if you don't have those two. But in celebration of Disability Pride Month, why not watch it for free?
Yeah, why not? That's amazing. I'm so happy that all of those streaming services are doing that. And, I watched it on Amazon Prime. It's an amazing documentary. So any listeners, definitely check it out. And we'll link to your socials in the show notes as well. But do you have any other, I know you mentioned that you're always working on the next thing, any other projects that you want to plug or anything else that's coming up that you want our listeners to know?
I'll tell you guys, because you guys are all dancers. I'm actually doing a docuseries now about women of dance, and I was lucky to interview Chita Rivera before she passed away, and her best friend, Graciela Danielle, who choreographed 9 Broadway shows, or was nominated for 9 Tonys for the Broadway shows that she did. She actually was a dancer with Chita in Chicago and then became a choreographer in BB Newirth, and just, the list goes on. And I just think that women need to be more recognized for their part in the field. And then I have another untitled documentary that has nothing to do with dance, but I can't say too much more than that, except I'm working with Tony winner Daryl Roth, who was the producer of Kinky Boots, on this other documentary.
Wow, you just left us with a huge cliffhanger. I can't wait to hear more about that. And that Women of Dance project, I'm so excited about that. I can't wait until we get to see more. I mean, all of the women that you're featuring are so huge. Those are 2 really exciting projects. So thanks for sharing those. Thank you so much again for your time, Dan. I've really enjoyed, learning from you and having this conversation about your documentary and everything that you're working on. So I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast.
Isn't Dan the greatest? He gave so much great advice for creative professionals in any industry, and especially in dance. And his passion for Bonnie, Ballet For All Kids, and these students really came through in this interview and in his documentary, Everybody Dance. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. As I mentioned, it's available for free on Amazon Prime in recognition of Disability Pride Month, the month of July, so it's the perfect time to watch. There's a link to the documentary on Amazon Prime in the show notes, but you can check it out on other streaming services as well if you don't have Prime. I'm also including links to Dan's social media and the Ballet For All Kids website if you want more information about Bonnie Schlachte, her curriculum, and her organization. A big, heartfelt congratulations to Dan and everyone who worked on this documentary for the recent Emmy nomination, and I can't wait for more information about both of the new projects that he mentioned. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, feel free to reach out to me on social media at eblosfield or by email at theadultballetstudio@gmail.com with any suggestions for guests, comments, or questions. And if I can ask you for one more little favor, the Adult Ballet Studio was recently nominated for the People's Choice Podcast Awards. We're so excited and grateful, but we need help from you, the people, for us to become a finalist. Listeners can vote through the month of July for their favorite podcasts in each category, and the most listener-voted podcasts will be selected as finalists. The Adult Ballet Studio is nominated in the arts category, so if you don't mind voting for a chance to make it to the finals, you can visit podcastawards.com/app/signup. There's a link in my bio and all of my social media. I'm at eblosfield everywhere, and I'll include the link in our show notes as well. Just sign up to vote, select the Adult Ballet Studio from the drop-down menu in the arts category, and cast your vote. Voting closes July 31st. Thank you so much for all of your support and for helping this podcast grow. We'll be back on Tuesday, July 16th with another guest that I can't wait for you to hear from. In the meantime, happy dancing, happy summer if it's summer where you are, and otherwise happy July, and see you at the bar.